Hello everyone and welcome back to BYOD. Today we'll be talking with filmmaker Jonathan Berman. Stay tuned. Jonathan Berman's documentaries explore subculture and the ideas and humans trying to create alternative universes. He's actually in the studio with me now. And his films have played all over the world. The latest one, Commune, is from 2006. It played at Slam Dance, I believe, yeah?
Slam Dance.
Slam Dance. Neighboring festival to Sundance, and then opened in theaters nationally, internationally?
Theaters nationally,
okay.
TV internationally.
Okay, and what I did today was wear my Commune shirt and no shoes. As an attempt to feel like I lived at Black Bear. Why don't you tell me how you even began to make this film? Were you at Black Bear? The whole time I was watching it, I was thinking that you maybe were part of it when you were a kid?
I appreciate that. That's like, in a way, a compliment, because
it's like very intimate, intimate portrait.
When I was making Schwitz, the film about the Russian baths, the one we're not going to show, that John Pearson, the film rep, came up, he said, I want to show your film at my seminar I do at my house.
He's great.
And I was like, yeah, thanks. Yeah. And then when he met me, he's like, oh, I thought you were going to be like a middle-aged, pot-bellied Jewish guy, you know?
Right, because it felt like you must be at the Schwitz.
And I think the defining commonality is that I just become part of the world, and I genuinely like the people I'm interviewing.
But how did you even come to find I mean, I hadn't heard it's Black Bear.
Black Bear Ranch, yeah.
Black Bear Ranch is this incredible commune, and it's interesting because most films you see about cults or communes are about how they don't really work, and somehow this community worked. It worked for people, and then there were some aspects that they came to realize in this experiment didn't work, which is really interesting. But Peter Coyote, who is actually a well-known actor, was a resident for a while.
He was kind of like, he would come in, pop out, but definitely part of, it was considered like affiliated tribes, you know, up and down the coast of California.
Right, that's interesting. There were 9 miles of just communes, right? Dotting the coast, something like that, and then and Black Bear was like the last one?
That's what Peter says in the film, yeah, Black Bear was like the last stop, kind of, because it was so remote. The way I found Black Bear Ranch and the folks there was from a book they wrote. I was actually in a bar in Williamsburg. That's how it usually starts, right? And I met my friend who's a documentary filmmaker and philanthropist, a new friend, and I'm like, well, what are you into? And he said, well, I'm into stuff that's off the grid. I'm like, me too. I got on Amazon, I was like, off the grid, and then I found this book that they all wrote together, all the people from Black Bear. And each person wrote a chapter. It was this obscure book. And in one line, they were like, don't bring your dogs here because this isn't a spa. This isn't a little vacation spa. And then in another line, they were like, people are being speciesist by subjugating animals. And then in another line, they were like, if you bring pets here, we might eat them.
Oh my.
So I'm like, I love this controversy and kind of intensity of these people and how it would switch every day.
Yeah.
So we went and met them, and then the stuff hit the fan. Or I can say shit here, I think.
You can say shit on the
shit
internet.
Hit the fan, yeah. Because they were like, who are you? You're the media. What are you doing here? 100 communards were surrounding us.
Wow.
You know.
Well, let's look at a clip. Let's look at Peter actually reminiscing and sort of telling us about Black Bear, so everybody out there can get a sense of what the heck we're talking about.
Great.
Okay.
It's hard for people to imagine today how poised on the brink of change things were. A lot of people were choosing to fight the government politically, but we saw the problem as culture, and we tried to create living possibilities of an alternative culture that we hoped, when push came to shove, people would defend. Our communal families were spread from San Francisco all the way north along the coast. But by the time you got to Black Bear, you were at the end of a 9-mile-long dirt road that ended at Black Bear. It was incredibly isolated.
So did this start with just a couple of people or 5 people, or how did this begin? How do I start a commune? Please.
How do you start? Okay,
It's
well, ideally you're dating or with someone whose parents were like founders of the American Communist Party, or and you're traveling through the woods. You're an artist, as you are, and you're traveling through the woods, and you see some land, and you're like, well, let's look at that. Elsa Marley and Richard Marley, who started it, and Elsa.
They were a couple at the time.
They were a couple at the time.
They don't appear to be a couple towards when you're actually filming the film. Are they still together?
No, they broke up, and Richard's passed since then.
Right.
But she's like, oh, what do you have? Oh, a farm, a ranch for an abandoned ranch for $22,000, hundreds of acres, whatever. So.
Right, and it was what kind of mine? It was a mine.
It was an abandoned mine, right? And there's all this great footage we cut out of the film about some of the ghost stories. I originally had this concept, this was going to be, and even for my new film, that this is going to be a kind of hippie ghost western. It's kind of a little subgenre, that there are a bunch of films in the 70s like that.
Okay. Now, you yourself, had you ever been, besides like being fascinated by the book, I mean, I can tell already from your People of Earth film that is currently in production, there's a bit of a through line. And it's not just you getting deep into these worlds, but it's the kind of worlds you're getting deep into. So what is it, where were you raised? And
I was raised in Long Island. My parents were, post-World War II, Depression era folks. My dad was in the war. My mom was like a Canadian beauty queen. They met in upstate New York.
Sweet, I can tell. I can see that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the glow.
You're too kind. I grew up in suburbia, and that was an interesting point in the 60s in Long Island, because I think at one point the Jews were utopian socialists, and still are many, So my neighborhood was primarily Jewish and Italian, so. But we list, you remember that movie Almost Famous?
Of course.
I will always be talking about feature films because I always try to make my docs feel like feel like nonfiction features. They are features. But
what I call them is scripted films.
Exactly, thank you, scripted.
Your films should be dramatic and have a narrative.
Yeah, and some sort of
as
catharsis.
documentaries. Yeah, they need to have an arc.
So there was that moment in Almost Famous where she gives him the albums, and she's like, take these. In these albums, you will find the secrets of life, she says to the little kid who becomes a rock journalist. And my sister had all these albums, The Doors and The Dead and Kraftwerk. And I'd look at them and listen to them. I was like, this is cool. By the time I was 13, I was playing rock and roll music and smoking weed and God knows what. We were, causing havoc in South America.
I'll fill in the blanks if you give me the year.
75, 76, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
It was the 70s.
So that also was kind of.
Oh yeah.
Your vision of how the rock stars lived was more of a communal vision as well. Was it kind of like you dreamed to be living that way in the 60s and so forth?
I don't know if I ever dreamed of the communal life. I'm always more of a private person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So actually you had some of the stereotypes that I have in my head of what a commune would be like.
And what Peter said, he's like, I couldn't really live there because of the cleanliness thing. I don't know if that made the cut. I don't think so.
I don't think it made the cut.
It's just like,
Isn't it funny how as a filmmaker you actually can't remember what made the cut?
Right. Well, there's all those great scenes that you wanted, but that you couldn't shoehorn them in. You have to kill your darlings and all that stuff.
Yes, you do.
I was very attracted, though, because of the ethos,
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like it almost works. That's the thing. It subtly breaks down, your film subtly breaks down the stereotypes that we have in our heads, because it almost really works. And the kids that come out of it aren't completely dysfunctional, even though some were kidnapped. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's look at the buying of the ranch and how was this thing financed in the first place. So let's look at the group buying the ranch. So they got their money from who for this?
I wish I had a couple of the Black Bear Ranch people. Haven't seen in a long time. They're all in San Francisco now with me to really tell the story. But okay, they got their money from rock stars of the era. They came down to LA and they were confrontational, and they, stayed with James Coburn, and Peter Tork gave them money, and somebody knew Linda Ronstadt from back home, and they hit her up. They were totally hitting people up and saying, "Hey man, you're portraying us on TV and movies, and we're the real thing." Right. And we want money now.
Right. So did the rock stars come and join I guess it was 36 families that started the group?
36
or
people,
that came,
I think.
Moved in?
No, I don't know if any rock stars did,
this
although.
Is 1972.
They say Bernadette from the Weather Underground didn't live there, but I kind of think she did. There's a lot of truths, as we know, as documentary filmmakers.
Yeah, and the footage is incredible.
She was kind of a rock star in a way.
Super 8?
Well, some of that footage was from Milestones by Robert Kramer, which is this incredible epic film we watched when I was still working in New York. He's always funny because you're always working in the opposite place that you're portraying I am. So now the new film's about living off the grid in Joshua Tree, and I'm here in LA in the nerve center of it all.
Right, in Silver Lake.
Yeah. The Milestones, Robert Kramer, great avant-garde film, very hard to find, had some Black Bear material in it. And then Elsa, who's this great painter who started Black Bear. She's like, there was a guy traveling around in a van shooting video. I think you could find him as this guy Lauren, and he had these tapes. They were those Portapack, is that what it's called? Portapack tapes, the old reel-to-reel original 1-inch tapes. And he was traveling around. He wanted it to be like a telegraph, he would go from commune to commune and shooting these films, and they were rotting in his garage in Oregon or something.
And you got him out.
We got him out. We also actually, if anyone's involved in Native American stuff, have a bunch of incredible Native American ceremonies that we saved at that point. Those should really go to the Smithsonian or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Well, the irony in all that is that Elsa, the founder of this place, she basically said, this is free, right? You can move in and live here. Anyone is welcome. Everybody's welcome. But then shortly thereafter, she comments that she was told not to make her art because it was too individualistic, right? It was too selfish a pursuit.
Well, a lot of
so there were suddenly rules that started to get made in the group.
Yeah, right. It's as I told you, I'm watching the original movies, and it's all of a sudden within the first seconds of movies being shot with the Lumiere brothers, genres are being invented. And it's almost within seconds of them founding this commune, rules are springing up.
Yeah, we have a need as humans to put order, place rules and categories, and draw lines in the sand, as they say in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right?
Yeah, totally. Why
Group the sand together and say, that sand is this.
That sand's my sand.
Yeah.
Our sand's cooler than your sand.
Yeah.
No, but why do you get to hang out in your silk robe and practice your classical piano all day while I have to go till the crops at 6 a.m.? Well, in the new utopian world we're building, we need artists as well as farmers.
Right, but Elsa wasn't allowed to make her art there.
That is, stuff started getting hairy, from the beginning, I think.
Yeah, let's look at the ideal life. I mean, there is something. I had to cut this clip short, everybody, because we don't want to get yanked off YouTube for nudity. So, yeah, just when we get to this beautiful naked river time, we have to cut. But let's look at the families moving in.
Sounds good.
Everyone's clothes were put up on big racks in the middle of the room, and you just got dressed every day in whatever you took off a rack. Or no one was allowed to sleep with anyone more than 2 nights in a row because that would promote couples, and couples were a bourgeois decadence. I was never much for the chaotic or the unaesthetic aspects of communes. I've always appreciated refinement. But when I got to Black Bear, I was just struck by the beauty of it. There was a creek, there were meadows, there were fields, and there were cute women there. So what more could you want?
Finally, one woman said, let's just have an orgy tonight. Well, none of us ever was in an orgy. We didn't even know what it was. and the humor of it really was that immediately it was said yes, and when nobody knew what they were saying yes to.
So in the middle of all of this, within months, it becomes winter, and this is amazing.
Right.
And I thought exactly what you were saying. Like, I thought that they were going to eat each other when I was watching the movie.
I think they thought they were going to eat each other too.
They almost did, right? I mean, they came close.
I think it was a pretty hairy winter. It was a lot of city people, as Haas said. Haas was a local Native American man, and he helped them learn how to survive in the wild, but they were kind of on their own mostly. And
then they ended up doing things like learning things about themselves, which actually really just moved me, that they started building toys for the kids, and actually, instead of breaking them totally apart or everybody going nuts and eating each other, they learned all these new skills and they came together.
They came together, yeah.
And that seems to have colored the entire commune. And I don't know if it's just a deficit, my own deficit, that I didn't know about Black Bear, but it's still going in some way, right?
It's still going in some way. I hope somebody from Black Bear can post a video. Can people post videos to respond to this somehow?
Sure, at BYOD.
That would be great.
No, at BYOD.
I'd like to know what's going. BYO Docs.
Twitter, yeah.
Okay,
I'd
love to know.
on Facebook.
Yeah, I'd love to know what's happening there now. But definitely, people come on the land, and I think there's a little bit of a vetting process now, just to make sure.
But the families forever, they make a pact, right? The families keep it forever. And the whole time, what I think is really interesting is that there's certain aspects that it seems like the experiment says, okay, this doesn't work. Like the rule about, I guess you couldn't sleep with the same person for more than 2 nights.
Because that would be bourgeois.
Because that would be, you maybe actually get some emotional ties to that person, and you could not be a couple. There was no, not to be any couples there, right?
Yeah, because coupledom was the beginning of bourgeoisie, lifestyle.
Right, but that experiment, that free love experiment, really didn't work very well.
No.
People rebelled against that. Eventually, one couple, I think, freaked out, right, and just came together and married or something.
Yeah, they were the rebels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cedar and Mahaj.
And people got jealous of one another, which is interesting too. I mean, it's
so human.
It doesn't. Yeah, it is so human. There's a film that we covered on BYOD called The Source.
Yeah,
about the
Jody's
Source
film.
Oh,
yeah.
You know Jody, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen 10 minutes of it, and I can't wait to see the rest. Because she called me when I was making this, and we talked, and she watched it, and the Source family is an incredible story as well.
Yeah. Another example of a group that works at least for a time. But in that case, there was a leader. And in this case, even though Richard and Elsa started it, it didn't seem that there was actually a leader, per se. Did you, as a filmmaker, start to uncover dynamics in the group?
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. You live with these people in the footage. You may only meet them for an hour or two, but you live with that footage for months or years.
Did you live with it for years?
Yeah.
How long did you make the film for? Yeah.
The edit process was probably 1.5 years. First, I worked with Marissa Simpson and then Michael Taylor, who's the hardest working man in show business.
I know Michael.
Yeah, Michael was just starting to cut.
Michael
at
edited
that point.
scenes for Mapplethorpe, my upcoming scripted film.
Of course.
At the Sundance lab. I spent,
Intersecting
we would
circles.
lock the door to the trailer as Michael would be editing. He's such a lovely guy.
He's great, and
I was psyched to see his name.
I think he had just worked with Michael Almereyda on a film, and Michael came on, and I was like, well, look, we were learning how to storytell, and then he did his part, and then I moved to California to teach at Cal State San Marcos, where I teach now, and so I was cutting, and then it was me and an intern in California, and so it was 3 editors over maybe 1.5 years.
The irony of what you're teaching today is not lost on me. When I came in today, you're teaching We Live in Public after this, right?
I'm teaching We Live
We're
in Public, talking about the
Jonathan
panopticon.
Ondi day.
Yeah, right?
But who knew?
Where goes the moon today?
That's a funny concept. A coincidence. So anyway, the children. You see this dirty sink, you see all this pestilence all around. The people get sick, right? So there's some kind of sickness that happens there. Is that right? At the commune? I thought so. Or is it the Shiva? The Shiva.
Well, that's definitely an interesting sickness.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Shiva Lila. I think there were various things that went around, bugs, but I'm not sure.
But there's kids being born all the time, right? And at some certain point, people move there to have babies, which is really, I mean, this is it's amazing that it's, less than 50 years ago. I mean, it's pretty recent history.
Natural childbirth in the woods with hospitals hours away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No way to get to any help whatsoever. So they all train and they all become midwives. It's wild. Let's look at the children of Black Bear.
My mother went into labor actually in the middle of a meeting about my birth. She went and laid down on the summer bed, and I came so quick that she just had me there. My mother is Gaba. I feel like she was the universal mother at Black Bear.
So her mother was really kind of the mother of the group, this woman you're speaking to, Allegra.
Allegra's mom, Gaba.
Gaba, yeah. Now, Allegra seems to be sort of a shining example of how you can grow up in an alternative environment and really be functional in your life, and even maybe more than functional. Maybe an example to everybody.
She's great. She leads workshops in Bale. Is it called Building Out of Mud and Straw?
Right.
Yeah.
So she's got all of these things that she's learned that she brings. But she lives in a bus?
This was filmed and shot a few years back, right? So
maybe not.
She had lived in a bus, and then she was building that incredible house.
But she lived, but she lived there since she was 13 in a bus, right?
And then she started building the mud house with all the stained glass windows.
Yeah. Incredible. And she actually maintains sort of a functional job and all of that. I mean, she's just...
Well, there's Allegra, and then there's Cecilia. Hi, Black Bear. Hopefully they watch this. And Cecilia's great because she's like the role model from both the Black Bear people and I'm sure you're getting to the cult
Shiva.
that arose up in opposition to.
Yeah. Well, actually, so I guess we should fill everybody in. So there's Allegra and Heba and all these people who are just, regular Black Bear residents, and then suddenly this cult shows up. And according to the rules of Black Bear, they need to actually accept anybody who's going to come in. And the Shiva people show up and they worship children. So what they do is they take acid and then they take care of their children while they're on acid. And that seemed okay for a while, right? But then there was a leader to that group, and that was a big difference, I think. And so things went south, and they got kicked out.
They got very tense. You asked about leadership. Richard was able to kind of be the leader, but not be the leader. He has a very Zen aspect to him. So, but Gridley came along, Gridley Wright, and was a very strong leader. And like a lot of amazingly strong cult leaders, half of what he was saying was right. It was like he wasn't necessarily wrong, but they just had some crazy ideas as well. And Cannoli, who's in the film, he was like, the problem was that Gridley and those guys, they didn't ask if we wanted to play. They just would show up and start playing with us, like in that Estian kind of, what's that institute, Esalen Institute way of like, we're gonna go up against your stuff in a drama to break through to the other side. Part of that is that you kind of ask people if they want to engage in that.
Yeah, you don't force them, right. So let's not leave Allegra. Let's look at Allegra first, and then and she's just someone who grew up there. She's just grew up at Black Bear, and then we'll look at Shiva.
This is my crazy little bus. I've been living in here since I was 13. It was like my step of independence. Cool. This is the Cobb house. I've been building this house for almost 3 years now. Probably 100 people's hands have gone into this. All of my life, that's been an incredible thing, just the freedom that I've been permitted. There's no fear.
Allegra is a shining star. She encompasses all the good that came from my experience of living at Black Bear. A child who was born into unconditional love from the whole ranch, as well as her her personal family. She is a total free spirit, a shining, glowing, inspiring person.
You shot that, I guess, as a result of interviews, and then all of a sudden realized, okay, now I got to go film her. I mean, you had so many characters.
Yeah, there was about 30 other characters. So part of it was winnowing down who I wanted to tell the story about. It's like that idea of the story wheel, like here's World War II. Okay, which is going to be your part of the story?
Well, you can't, I mean, in World War II, you could focus on a battle or a general, but when you're telling the story of a group, and I came up against this in Join Us.
Sure.
You know, 4 families that leave a cult. Even with 4 families and a treatment center, you got the counselors, you got the families, you got the cult leader. You know, how do you've got a commune. The whole idea, you can't tell the story from one person's perspective, or even 2.
Agreed.
So how did you do that? Did you kind of like follow the breadcrumbs, or?
It turned out one thing we followed is Bell Labs research, which is that people will remember 7, like the phone number, 7 digits, but not 8. We had 8 characters for a long time. We had someone who was a big Shiva Lila person who lives in Hawaii, and people got confused, they were bored, and then when we took that character out, it was like, whoosh, people got the movie.
Huh.
So 7 was the maximum number of characters. The rest I kind of just went by gut, you know. It's like, who's interesting? You know, you do 1,000 screenings. When are people nodding out during the screening? When are they excited?
So you did test screenings?
Oh yeah.
Did you ask specific questions afterwards?
Oh yeah,
okay.
On paper and on
and then we'd go back and
in
go
the
back.
edit room. It was fun. We had all kinds of fun people in our edit room.
Yeah, we had that too, where with Join Us, and I don't remember exactly how many characters we ended up with, but we had that too, where there was a time that we knew every character, but nobody else could tell what was going on.
Who was who? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the only time I've ever experienced that in one of my films. But it is interesting to tell a group story, which you do really well. I mean, you go around and by the end, I get a sense of a real look at what it is to try to live as a group. There is no fear in some, growing up without fear on the one hand, but growing up without a nuclear family on the other. For her, I'm sure she has very mixed feelings about that. And then when the Shiva Lila people come in, they're way more radical than even as radical as Black Bear looks.
Right.
So they get thrown out. And they take kids with them?
They take kids with them. There's literally like a scene where like one, a kid, if it doesn't exist, it exists in my imagination, with one parental person on one side and a Shiva Lila parental person on the other, and the kid or asking the kids to decide, which is kind of insane 60s logic. Like, do you want to go away with these people to India? Now, to be fair to that crazy cult,
you interview in the film?
I interview some of those guys, and I actually like, what's his name? I forgot his name.
The guy in the garage,
that
big open space.
Yeah. There are diseases that ravage third world countries and America. Stuff does happen. So there was, I don't want to give away the film, but there was definitely some tragedy involved.
Let's look at it and see if the clip gives it away. If we give away your film in the clip. So let's look at Shiva leaving Black Bear.
The money was collected from rock stars and other people.
They gathered together with some of our people here, and got it together to leave the country, to go to the Philippines and then to India.
Being 5 years old and being given the option to choose between staying at Black Bear and going with the Shiva Lila, for me at the time, it was just, I think I wanted to be with my mother. But I didn't realize that a huge part of the group was breaking the bond between mother and child. They sent me to live with this family in the Philippines, up in this tree house, and it's this whole family. Didn't speak the same language. I was crying for like the first amount of time, just kicking and screaming. When I was in India living with these families, the families would say, the Shiva Lila who brought you here, who are like the only family I knew, went back to the United States. A lot of the kids were really young. It's actually kind of sad. I'll try not to do it without crying. It might not work. When we went from the Philippines to India, I don't remember the name of the village, but we ended up in a village where there was an epidemic, I think diphtheria, and a lot of the young kids got sick, and I don't know how many, but a good portion of the kids died.
There's nothing you can do to prepare for that. It's just a devastating experience. And even after all these years, I still, you know, even discussing this brings up an incredible amount of grief for me. It's like there's a hole that's ripped in my reality.
Wanting to save the world can be a huge ego trip. It's just another bullshit thing.
We ended up leaving India, and we traveled through Mexico. I think we were in Canada for a while. It's all not very clear. We were in Oregon and Ashland, I believe, and there was this girl, Milagro, who I don't know if you've heard about, but she's one of the Black Bear kids, and she happened to live in that town, and her house was right down the street from where the Shiva Lila group was staying, and she saw me and recognized me.
She wrote me a letter and sent me to Celia's letter because she was trying to teach Celia an alphabet, how to write. So she taught her how to write me a letter. Celia wrote me a letter, and it was the first time I knew they had come back.
So that was kind of, she planted this little seed. She played me the Paul Simon and Garfunkel song, Cecilia, You're Breaking My Heart, Come On Home.
It's incredible. What is he referring to there when he's saying this hole that's left? I mean, did they not intend to leave the children in India? Do you know? I mean, did you?
There was a hole ripped in his
there?
reality when they went to India and children died.
But they left. They left them there, right?
They left the children?
Yeah, the Shiva Lilas went back to the States and left their children. I mean, did they not?
No, well, they were. I think at this point they were traveling with a group of the kids.
How'd they even get these kids out of the country? I mean, were immigration laws different back then?
I don't know. It's horrible. I mean, you know, I guess traveling through third world countries with very small children as a tribe is maybe a bad idea.
Is that what you're trying to say with this film?
With this film?
Are you
No.
saying? I mean, there's people in the group like Cannoli who express that. I mean, in Black Bear, in the main group, who express real regret at not having a partner, like a loving, you know, partner in life,
and the legacy
because of that. Do you feel like that's sort of the limitations of this ideal vision, or trying to save the world is a very difficult job? Do you feel that that is what you were saying more with the film, or do you feel like there's things that we're missing in our own life now in the world today that we could glean from this film?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, history is not static. We think it's static, but it's just, it comes alive when you re-examine it and then somebody looks at it and a conversation begins. So this film was a re-examination of the 60s through these people and saying, wow, there's a lot of really great things that happened in the 60s, but be careful about going way overboard. And I was saying, you know, I don't know very much about Buddhism, but I do believe one of the things that the Buddha said was that beware of the spiritual trap. Isn't that funny? Because people fall into Buddhistic spiritual traps all the time. And it's one of the few things I think he said was like, don't get caught in the spiritual trap where you think you're the holy person.
Right. Don't try to save the world.
Saving the world could be another bullshit thing. I don't know.
Oh boy, how depressing.
But
okay, so.
But you know, when you become righteous, that's the under.
Right.
Text.
When you think that your absolute truth.
Yeah, we're the stuff.
Absolute truth.
I mean, there's certain things they said were right. You at Black Bear are kind of middle class. You kind of want to go out and get a little stoned and have somebody babysit your kids, and that's what, you know, what the Shiva Lila were saying. And like, maybe there's a bigger truth.
Right. So they came there and said, forget this. You guys are, you guys are mild.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, what a crazy time. So hopefully we've learned from that and gleaned the best of, you know.
Right. And so moving on to another film of yours that I want to make sure we cover.
Sure.
This film, it's called My Friend Paul, is not at all about a commune. It's about your friend Paul.
Right.
But the thing is, what's interesting about the film to me and why I want to cover it is that it really shows how we as documentary filmmakers can get caught in a situation because our cameras lead us into these worlds, or we decide, oh, this would be an interesting thing. But when you're filming a documentary, you're not filming with actors, you're filming with real people. They're real, they're living, they're breathing. They watch the film later, they want to see footage now, whatever it is, it's complicated. And so I don't want to give anything away because your film is very artfully, opens extremely artfully. So let's just show the opening of My Friend Paul. We'll take it from there.
When I was 11, I begged my parents for a Super 8 camera. I don't know why, but I had an urge to make movies. Just down the street from me was my first and best star, my childhood friend Paul. I'm still a filmmaker.
What?
It's heavy.
It's stuck.
I want to put it during the corner in the box.
Lately, I've been in a rut.
Here? Not really allowed to do this.
So I started writing something new, a gothic comedy about a depressed monster and his therapist. But it wasn't going that well. Then I got a call from Paul. When I was a kid, Paul was my best friend. But after high school, he got into drugs and robbed a bunch of banks. He wound up in prison and we lost touch. The next day, he phoned me again, and I had an idea.
John.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
How are you?
It's been a while.
Uh-huh. I want to come up there and interview you in the big house.
You can't film me here.
Why not?
This is some fucking jail, John.
So, they film shit in jail. Don't you watch 2020?
We can't let you in here.
Why not?
John, this is a gigantic jail. It's like a penitentiary. Each fucking thing is behind bars and shit. You don't just walk around this place like a playground.
I understand that. I didn't imagine that you did, you know.
Right.
Don't they have, like, visitation rooms?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so that's what you do. You do it there.
You're going to visit who?
You idiot.
I've filmed in prisons also. That's actually how I started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was at Yale, I would go to women's prisons.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling actually to come out of the prison with the footage.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I've carried this person's voice and story to freedom or to something else, you know? It's almost, I don't know, I felt it would really introduce me to the power of filmmaking.
Right?
In prison.
Also the power of the warden, how futile it is.
Oh my
It's all about the
God.
warden. If they say yes, you're in.
Yeah, so how did you manage that?
Well, this...
You just showed up? Or
No,
you called?
no.
You called.
We called.
Okay.
You got to
It
call, maybe
sounded-
bring some cookies, you know. No, we, not the ones with the bullets in it either.
They're getting more and more. What year was this?
With Paul, I think it was like 99 or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they're getting more and more stringent about letting us filmmakers.
Well, this was Plymouth. We filmed in Plymouth and Schuylkill. Plymouth in Massachusetts, they were showing it off because they make money holding prisoners, and they hadn't had an escape, and it was a new facility. So they're like, hell yeah, we want, come on in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did they ask you to include the fact that there hadn't been an escape?
No, they were pretty cool about it.
Okay.
You know.
Just whatever you wanted to show.
And not that astute, because I don't know if you saw that section, but the PR guy for the prison is carrying this big book about the Nazis,
Yeah.
the big swastika on it.
Unbelievable.
And Paul has a Nazi fixation, so it's just a funny scene.
Yeah, with Paul, he's pretty complex. When you set out to make the film, what were you trying to do? Were you just like, okay, let's catch up with Paul because he's in jail? Was it that simple? Or?
You know, I like to structure the films like scripted films, like you said. So I had to have a flaw. It's all true, but what is truth? I was writing that crazy story, and I was in a little bit of a rut. And Paul was this character who was just naturally dynamic. He has like a little De Niro to him. But I knew it was going to go deeper, and definitely one of the overarching archetypes for this project was Pandora's Box.
Right.
But it really did hit the fan on this one too.
Yeah,
that's how you know it's a good film.
I mean,
the shit
I've got
has to hit the fan.
stories
Right?
about me just randomly filming people, and then that coming back to me, you know, and becoming in the middle of like divorce proceedings and
Whoa,
whatever, you know. I mean,
whoa.
as filmmakers, we can be. And that's what really struck me about the film. So let's look at one more clip on the show, which
Yeah.
is to introduce us to Paul.
Yeah.
Really, Paul present day. And then and we can just hint at what happens, but hopefully people can catch up with this film. So let's look at The Criminal Mind.
We can look at
By the time the cops got there, I was all the way on California Street up by Van Ness. All of a sudden, this guy's got himself $9,000, $10,000 in his hand. Here I am, beautiful fucking hotel room and shit. You don't come in with anything that's gonna resemble any type of dangerous weapon. Just a note. They're trained in their training that when someone is attempting to rob the bank, just give them the money, and when they leave, hit the alarm. Because they don't know if you have a gun or not. They don't know what type of individual you are, whether you're a wanted criminal. I caught on to the fact that all you had to do is get a note, and you know, I was that guy. You know what I mean? Hey, you don't know me. I'm anybody. You know? I robbed 11 banks in San Francisco in 1986. I robbed 11 banks.
But this isn't the film I really want to make. Paul's my friend. He's not Dillinger. Paul didn't even carry a gun.
John, the criminal mind is something you got to study for many years, okay?
But tell me, okay, but just give me...
It's not just these guys who appear in the paper, well, look, this crazy guy did this. To understand the whole thing is important.
But let me
Stop. Don't you understand?
Yes.
That it maybe I didn't understand it completely, that I thought, oh, I robbed the bank just for the money, so I can leave prison, it's all right, it's over with. And then I robbed another bank. Now I understand maybe there was something else behind it. Maybe there was a whole psychology behind it. Maybe I was so antisocial, and I wanted to get back in society, and I was into the thrill of it, and I wanted the money, a whole bunch of things.
So this wasn't the film you wanted to make? Just hearing Paul spout off in jail about being a bank robber, a lowly bank robber.
You know, we got some funding from Swiss TV.
Okay.
That's why it's good to get out of the house. I was in Berlin and I met someone from Swiss TV. And
good to get out of the house. That's, that's the main advice we have for you on BYOD. Get out!
Get out of the house, you crazy kids. And we did a 20-minute version that was like a biopic of bank robber. And I was like, that's not the movie. And I sat there with my editor. It was really tense there too. And I was like, David, don't you understand this is like a film about me and Paul? So it's always that question about including yourself as the maker.
Well, how did you? That was my next question.
Old school question.
Why did you include yourself? I mean,
going beyond.
Was it postscript, or did you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to film myself writing this crappy screenplay right now? Which I'm not saying it's crappy. I'm just saying it was a crappy process.
It was a zany screenplay.
It was driving you nuts. Or was it always going to be, okay, I'm going to reunite with my friend Paul?
I liked it, and then again, for the new film too, is it like a filmmaker travels through an exotic land to hear the folk tales of a early UFO contactee, or am I not in it? I'm willing to go both ways. I'm willing to take no prisoners. I just want it to be as entertaining as possible. But in this case, I thought it did work, you know, and I could see it clearly. And that was a little bit of a struggle with my editor, who's a genius editor. He works with Scorsese now. And
who is this?
David Tedeschi. Hey, David. We had that, you know, he didn't quite see it. I'm like, look at that pregnant moment. It was just me like not saying anything, and I think he just saw me not saying anything. It's like that old Russian test where they have the...
Well, you quickly, here's the thing, is that up till now it seems like pretty contained. You've got Paul, he's in jail, you've got the warden's permission.
Right.
It's gonna be fine. And then you get a call at 3 in the morning.
Right, and again...
What was the call?
It really was real, but again, as structured in the editing and you know, you get the call, refusal of the call, all that myth crap. It really works.
But it really was true.
And it really was happening, and that was David Leitner, a camera person, and called him, and he trooped out at 3 in the morning. We went to Penn Station, no permissions. Sorry, Penn Station.
Nobody's there anyway.
Nobody was there. And Amtrak, and Paul got off the train. And
so Paul calls and he tells you that
I'm coming to New York, dude.
Right.
Dude, yeah. But you know, one of the things about
he says, I'm coming to New York, and you're now it. I mean, you're now, you
and I want to hang out with
now.
you. Yeah.
That's the thing, is you've filmed him now.
Right.
And you're his friend, right? You are his childhood friend.
I'm his von Sternberg, and he's my Marlene Dietrich. You know, when you make a film, you try to, I don't know if you do this, but I do like charts where I give each character mythological names. Like I did that for the Black Bear Ranch
Actually,
film
on my current film, I don't even have to do that because they did that
themselves.
Yeah. So,
awesome.
Like, they were already easier.
Like they're on it.
Optimus Prime, and you know.
Yeah, and so that was one of the moments with Paul, was that, like, you know, I'm von Sternberg, he's Marlene Dietrich. I think that's the right pairing.
But I've never done that before, actually.
There was I'd like to do that to try to figure out what the scene's about, you know.
Okay.
So.
But he comes in, he's pretty critical.
He's pretty critical.
He's pretty desperate to get to see what you've been doing. What have you done? What films have you made? And what are you doing
Well,
with
it's also a
me?
reunion. It's friends, you know. That's. I mean,
You try to keep it like that.
it's a film
You're like, let's go to a bar.
yeah, let's have a falafel.
I was like, is it wise to take a guy who just got out of jail to a bar?
Probably not.
So I mean, ultimately, you probably don't want to give the film away.
Well, this is a film about the '60s in a way. Interestingly enough,
Again.
thinking about it, yeah, because
So is the UFO film,
it's
by the way.
Yeah, right. It's all well. George Van Tassel is the original hippie in a way. He said, like, put away your.
And that's your new. That's
the
your
new
current film.
Yeah, he said, put away your nuclear weapons. The aliens told me so. But anyway, getting back to Paul, it's like, how far can you take it? The rock and roll ethos of take no prisoners. Well, I went to Bard College MFA, and one of my instructors there was genius.
Oh, that explains it all.
That explains it all.
I get it now.
Hi, Bard.
Bard.
Yeah.
And what, you have classes under waterfalls at Bard, don't
Yeah, we had no classes. We just had crits for like 6 hours a day.
Okay, there you go.
And sessions with, it's a brilliant program. And Leslie, I think it was Leslie Scalapino, or one of the people there, she's a poet. She was like, wow, reminds me of that film, I think it was that John Singleton film where where kids feel like they have more than one life.
Right.
Like in the ghetto, the way kids are. And that Paul and me felt like we had 9 lives, you know. But that rock and roll ethos of take no prisoners. You know, I'm just gonna take it to the max, baby. And this is the penalty, the costs of that. So I think both films, now that I'm thinking about it, have this theme of go for it, but you know, within reason a little, you know, think a little bit about where you're going with it.
There will be a cost.
Paul and the Shiva
There'll be a
Lila.
price to pay.
You know,
for freedom.
And there's complicated backstories that you can't fit into
breaking the rules.
Yeah, well, there's complicated backstories that, like a haiku. A film's like a haiku. It's a very codified, short amount of time. You can't fit all of the backstory of Gridley Wright's pathology or
Right.
Paul's backstory.
Right, and I believe in 90 minutes for a film or less.
Oh yeah,
You don't have
I'm
to
with
pee.
you.
You know,
that's why I love film noir. It's never more than 90 minutes.
Last thing, because we have to end and let you go and teach other children about my work today.
Awesome. So weird.
Yeah, that is weird. But what's your advice as now that you've made several films, you teach film. How do you teach a person to make a documentary? How to make a documentary? What would be like the biggest thing you would say, and most important?
Find something you're insanely passionate about, or something, and that you have access to, someone who will let you get in there, or you be willing to ask. I think, you know, I'm born with this a little bit, but having that ability to just kind of ask and get in there. But if you don't have it, fake it. You know, ask them to turn down the music when you're filming in a cafe.
Definitely.
Otherwise, you can't cut around it. Ask that dude who jogs by in the Statue of Liberty outfit every morning if you can film them. You know, ask and have access to the world, and just, you know, follow your curiosity and your passion.
That reminds me, I just have to say, I was just in Hawaii for a week on vacation, and my first vacation since I was like 10. And I was on the beach, and there was a guy combing for money, or coins, like at this private resort or whatever, and
Love those guys.
one of those guys, and he was like brown, super tan. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, like, is this your career?
Are you an ex-B actor?
So I, of course, had my 7D just to like film family footage, right?
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I'm totally engaged in an interview with this guy. Because it's just like, when else am I going to talk to this, you know? It's amazing, the hunt, you know, everything he had to say. It's just incredible how a camera can take us. It's the bridge. We can ask anybody.
That's true. It becomes your passport.
They really will answer questions, you know? And,
right.
Yeah.
It's true. Like some people I wouldn't necessarily even talk to, I will with the camera.
Yeah. Exactly. And you'll ask them questions you wouldn't ask if you didn't roll the camera.
Right.
So, anyway, on that beautiful note about documentary filmmaking, I'm glad you survived Paul and the Commune, and now you're dealing with UFOs. Your next film, how do we stay in touch with you and find out? It's communethemovie.com for Commune, right?
Yeah, and you could reach us there.
And we can link through to
People of Earth Film.
People of Earth. Okay.
Peopleofearthfilm.com.
Okay.
And this will be the Southern California version of Commune in a way.
I can't wait.
Also, just a film about Southern California in general.
I think we should screen it in my backyard so that we can see a spaceship land or something.
Ooh, I like it. Right near JPL.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being on BYOD.
Thank you.